Cheek stood in the observation deck of the Velaran diplomatic vessel, watching the blue and green planet grow larger in the view screen. Earth, the home world of humans. Kix's crystalline skin reflected the light from the distant sun, creating small rainbows across the polished floor. Four arms crossed in what might have been nervousness for a Velaran. The assignment had come 3 days ago. Cheeks would embed with human military forces during an upcoming operation, not as a participant, but as an observer. The Velaran Confederacy wanted to understand why humans had become so sought after as allies in military conflicts. In just 80 years since first contact, humans had built a reputation that made even the oldest warrior species pause. KX had read the reports. Humans were small compared to most galactic species. They had no natural armor, no claws, no venom. Their home world gravity was average. Their lifespan was short. By all physical measurements, they should have been prey species, not predators. Yet 3 different civilizations had requested human assistance against the Kravix horde in the past month alone. The Kravix were nightmare-made flesh, 8 ft tall, armored exoskeletons, mandibles that could crush steel. They had conquered 40 star systems in the past decade. They took no prisoners. They showed no mercy, and now they were advancing on Thesser Prime, a colony world with 4 million civilians. Most of those civilians were Velaran. Observer Cheeks, please report to the briefing room. KX walked through the curved corridors of the diplomatic vessel. Everything here was smooth, flowing, peaceful. The Velaran had not fought a war in 3,000 years. They had forgotten what it meant to be soldiers. That was why I felt so unprepared for this assignment. The briefing room held a dozen other Velaran officials and one human. The human stood near the holographic display, hands clasped behind his back. He wore a dark blue uniform with various insignias that meant nothing to his face. Was weathered, lines around his eyes suggesting he smiled often, but his eyes themselves were different. They were calm, but there was something underneath that calm, something that made Kix's skin pulse with uncertain light. Observer KX. Welcome, I am Captain Duan of the United Human Space Forces. The humans spoke the common galactic language perfectly, though with an accent Kix found difficult to place. I will be your host aboard the UHSF carrier Indomitable. Captain Chix bowed in the Thurin manner. I am honored, though I must admit I am uncertain what I will observe. I have no military experience. Duan's mouth curved upward, a smile. Kess remembered, that may be exactly why you were chosen. Fresh eyes see things veterans miss. The briefing was short. The Kravix horde was assaulting Thessar Prime with overwhelming force, 40,000 Kravik warriors against whatever defenders could be mustered. The planetary defense force had already been overrun. Civilian evacuation was impossible without time that could only be bought with blood. The United Human Space Forces is deploying 8,000 Marines, Duan said. His voice remained calm, as if discussing whether rather than a battle with 5-1 odds. Our objective is to establish a defensive perimeter around the primary civilian centers and hold until relief forces arrive. 8,000 against 40,000. One of the Velen officials spoke, voice crystallizing with concern. Captain, surely this is not possible. It will be difficult, Duan agreed, but possible. We have done worse, that statement hung in the air, wondered what worse meant to a species like humans. The transfer to the Indomitable took 4 hours. The human vessel was nothing like Velen. Ships were Velen design emphasized beauty and flow. Human ships were brutal and practical. The Indomitable looked like a weapon that someone had added engines to. Its hull was scarred with marks from previous battles. Some had been repaired, some had been left as they were. We keep some of the scars, Duan explained as they walked through the ship's corridors. To remember, the interior was just as practical. Gray walls, harsh lighting, everything designed for function. Crew members moved with purpose through the halls. Most of them were young, Chex realized. So young some looked barely into adulthood by human standards. Duan brought to a large bay where soldiers in combat armor were conducting drills. This is Charlie Company, 2nd Battalion. They will be your primary observation group. Their commanding officer is Lieutenant Minyu. Lieutenant Minyu was tall for a human, lean and muscular. He had a scar across his left cheek that he made no effort to hide. When Daewon called him over, he moved with the grace of a natural athlete. Lieutenant, this is Observer Cheeks from the Velaran Confederacy. They will be accompanying your unit during the operation. Minyu studied Kick with dark eyes. Welcome aboard, Observer. Fair warning. Combat is not pleasant for those unused to it. Stay close to Sergeant Hijan. She will keep you safe. Sergeant Hijan emerged from the group of drilling soldiers. She was shorter than Minyu, stockier, with gray threading through her black hair. Her face was weathered like Dayu, but her eyes held something different. They held weight, the weight of someone who had seen too much and kept moving forward. Anyway, Observer, H-Jun said, bowing slightly, I will show you where you will be staying and introduce you to the unit. Over the next hour, Chicks met dozens of humans. Private J, who looked too young to be a soldier. Corporal Sara, who moved with quiet confidence. Private Taeying, who cracked jokes that made others laugh despite the upcoming battle. Medic Yoonji, whose hands were steady and sure. They all seemed so ordinary. They laughed, they complained about food, they teased each other like family. Nothing about them suggested they were the warriors that made the galaxy whisper in fear. That evening, Cheeks found H-Jin in the armory checking her equipment. Sergeant, may I ask a question? Of course. Why do humans accept these missions? You are outnumbered. The odds are not in your favor. Your species could refuse and suffer no dishonor. H-Jun was quiet for a long moment. She picked up her rifle, checked the action, then set it down again. Because someone has to observe. Those are 4 million civilians on Thesser Prime. They did not choose this fight. Someone has to stand between them and the monsters, and we are very good at standing that. We have in 233, even if it costs your lives, especially then. H-Jun said, that is when it matters most. Cheeks returned to their quarters that night with those words echoing in their mind. The ship's lights dimmed to simulate night. Through the small viewport, Cheeks could see the stars. Somewhere out there, the Kravik's horde was advancing, and 8,000 humans were preparing to stop them. For the first time, Cheeks felt something that Veliern had not felt in millennia, the cold touch of fear before battle. And Cheeks was not even fighting. the indomitable, hummed with activity. 48 hours until they reached Thessar. Prime, 48 hours until 8,000 humans threw themselves against 40,000 Kraviks. Warriors, Kik spent those hours observing, trying to understand what made humans different. The first thing Kix noticed was the preparation. Humans did not simply ready their weapons and wait, they checked. Everything, every piece of equipment was inspected 3 times, ammunition was counted and recounted. Medical supplies were organized and reorganized. Armor was adjusted until it fit perfectly. We have a saying, Private J explained while cleaning his rifle for the 4th time that day. Proper preparation prevents poor performance. You have cleaned that weapon many times already, Kix observed. Yes, Jay agreed. And I will clean it many more times. Before we drop, this rifle might save my life, might save my friend's life. Worth the effort. Watched as Jiho worked, his hands moved with practiced efficiency, but there was something meditative about the process, like a ritual. Are you afraid? Asked. Jiho paused. Yes, always am. Before a drop, fear keeps you sharp, keeps you alive. Then why do you go? Because fear is not a good enough reason to stay. Later, Kix attended the mission briefing with Charlie Company. The briefing room was packed with soldiers. They sat on chairs on the floor, standing against walls, all eyes focused on the holographic display showing Thessar. Prime. Lieutenant Minu stood beside the display. Listen up. Intelligence reports 40,000 Kraviks on planet. They have already overrun the planetary defense forces. Our job is to secure the civilian centers and hold until the fleet arrives with reinforcements. Estimated time until relief is 72 hours. 72 hours, 3 days. Cheeks felt their skin pulse with anxiety. 3 days against odds like these. We will be dropping in 12 locations simultaneously. Minu continued. Each company holds one sector. No retreat, no surrender. The civilians are depending on us. A hand went up. Corporal Sara. Rules of engagement, sir. Standard row applies. Positive identification before firing. Civilians are non-combatants. Medical aid will be provided to enemy wounded if tactically feasible. Was confused. Lieutenant, forgive my ignorance, but you are establishing rules for how you fight. The room went quiet. Minu turned to face Kik directly. Yes, observer, we have laws that govern warfare. We have crimes that soldiers can be charged with. Even in war, there are lines we do not cross. But why? Your enemy does not follow such rules. The Kraviks take no prisoners. They show no mercy. That is exactly why we must. Sergeant Higgins said from the back of the room. We do not fight to become like them. We fight to protect those who cannot protect themselves. If we lose our honor in the process, we lose everything that makes us worth protecting. The briefing continued. Tactics were discussed. Maps were memorized. Questions were answered. Through it all, the humans remained focused. But there was no bravado, no boasting. They approached warlike craftsmen approaching difficult work. Serious, professional, respectful of the danger. After the briefing, Kix found Captain Dewan in his ready room. The captain was reviewing reports on a data pad. He looked up when Kix entered. Observer, what can I do for you? Captain, I am trying to understand. Your species has such strict rules about warfare. You regulate how you fight, yet your reputation suggests you are the most effective warriors in the galaxy. How do these things coexist? Doohan sat down his pad. Sit please, he gestured to a chair. Observer, let me tell you about Earth, our home world. For thousands of years, humans fought wars. Tribe against tribe, nation against nation. We became very good at killing each other. Too good, we developed weapons that could destroy our entire world, and we almost used them. Kick listened, crystalline skin dimming with attention. We learned that being good at war was not enough. Doohan continued. We had to be smart about war. We had to know when to fight and when to stop. We had to protect the innocent even when it was difficult, because war without rules is not war. It is just murder on a grand scale. The Kraviks do not see this distinction. No, they do not, and that is why they will lose. Doohan's voice was certain, not arrogant, just factual. The Kraviks fight because they are strong. They take what they want because they can, but humans fight for something beyond ourselves. We fight for the people behind us, for the innocent who cannot fight. That gives us strength. The Kraviks cannot understand that. Evening, chicks wandered the ship. In the mess hall, soldiers gathered in small groups. Some ate in silence, others talked quietly. In one corner, Private Jiho was writing on actual paper, old-fashioned, even by human standards. Letters, Sergeant Higgins said, appearing beside KX. He writes them before every operation, just in case he dies. Yes, words for his family, so they know he was thinking of them at the end. It seemed morbid to Kes, planning for death before the battle, but there was something beautiful about it too. Humans faced death with open eyes. In another section, Corporal Sora sat with headphones, eyes closed. Music from Earth. Jun explained old songs from her grandmother's time. She says they remind her what she is fighting for. Everywhere Czechs looked, humans prepared in their own ways. Some checked weapons, some wrote letters, some exercised, some prayed to various gods, some simply sat with friends, sharing silence. Kicks found themselves in the observation deck late that night. Through the viewport, stars streamed past as the ship traveled through faster than light space. Beautiful, peaceful, so different from what was coming. Cannot sleep. Lieutenant Minu joined Kicks at the window. Velieren do not require as much rest as humans, and I am troubled about the battle, about all of this. Kicks gestured vaguely. Your species faces death so calmly. You prepare for war like others prepare for work. How do you live like this? Minu was quiet for a long moment. Do you know what lieutenant means in human military structure? A junior officer rank. Yes. But do you know how I became a lieutenant? Minu's reflection in the viewport showed a sad smile. I used to be a teacher. I taught children mathematics. Then the Kraviks attacked a colony where my sister lived. She died protecting her students, bought them time to evacuate. After that I enlisted, because I realized that teaching children is meaningless if there is no one to protect them while they learn. I'm sorry for your loss. Thank you, but my point is, we do not live for war. Observer, we live for peace. We live for the quiet moments between battles, for children learning mathematics, for music and letters, and friends sharing meals. War is what we do so others can have those things. That is why we stay calm, because someone has to. The ship's communication system announced 12 hours until arrival at Thesser Prime. 12 hours until Cheeks would see if humans truly earned their reputation. 12 hours until The Kraviks learned why the galaxy whispered warnings about the small species from Earth. The drop pods were small, cramped, and terrifying. Kik sat strapped into a harness next to Sergeant Higgin, surrounded by 12 human soldiers of First Squad Charlie Company. The walls were bare metal. Only light came from red emergency strips. Everything shook. First time in a drop pod, H-Jun asked over the squad communication channel. First time doing anything military, Kix admitted. Their crystalline skin flickered with colors that indicated anxiety and body language. Try to relax. The drop is the easy part. Chicks did not find this comforting. The Indomitable had entered orbit over Thessar Prime 20 minutes ago. Sensors showed Kravik's forces spreading across the planet like a disease. 40,000 warriors organized in hunting packs, killing everything they found. The civilian population was huddled in 12 major cities, 12 cities that would soon have human defenders if they survived the drop. 60 seconds, the pod's automated voice announced. Around the human soldiers made final checks. Weapons secure, armor sealed. Some touched small objects they carried. Religious symbols, photographs, lucky charms. Private Taein caught Chicks watching and grinned. My daughter made me this bracelet. Been with me through 4 campaigns. You have a daughter. 2 daughters, 6 and 8 years old, probably making their mother crazy right now. And you chose to come here to risk never seeing them again. Taeyang and LT Uncan GT's grin faded. I came here so they grow up in a galaxy where the Kraviks don't exist, so they never have to know the fear these civilians feel right now. 30 seconds. The shaking increased. Through the small viewport, Kix could see Thessar Prime's atmosphere beginning to glow around them. They were hitting air at orbital velocity, protected only by the pod's heat shields. 10 seconds. Brace for impact. The world exploded into noise and violence. The pod hit the ground like a meteorite. Retro rockets fired to slow their descent. Not enough. They crashed into something. Metal screamed. The harness cut into Kix's body. Then stillness. Sound off. H-Jun commanded. 1, OK. 2, OK. 3, OK. The responses came quick and professional. All 12 soldiers accounted for. Chicks made a sound that the humans accepted as confirmation. The pod's front ramp dropped. Sunlight and alien air rushed in. Move, move, move. Higgin was first out, weapon raised. The squad flowed behind her like water. Kik stumbled out last, eyes adjusting to Thessar Prime's green-tinted sunlight. They had landed in a plaza between tall buildings. Other pods had landed nearby. Human soldiers were already forming up, establishing defensive positions. Everything happened so fast, so coordinated. Then the Kraviks arrived. They came from the streets between buildings. 8 ft tall, armored in dark kitten, moving on 6 legs with terrible speed. Mandibles clicked and clattered. They carried weapons that looked primitive but deadly, and they made sounds. Horrible sounds that echoed between the buildings. Contact front, someone shouted. The plaza erupted in violence. Ki had never heard weapons fire in anger before. The sound was overwhelming. Human rifles cracked with sharp reports. Kraviks weapons made deeper booming sounds. Explosions threw debris into the air. Something hot passed close to Kix's head. A bullet or energy bolt. They froze. Observer down. Higgin grabbed cheeks and pulled them behind a concrete Barrier, stay here, do not move. Then Chun was gone, moving to join her squad. And Kix watched. The humans did not fight like Czechs expected. They did not charge heroically. They did not stand and trade fire. They moved in teams, always advancing, using cover, supporting each other. When one squad moved forward, another provided covering fire when someone called for help. 3 others responded instantly. The Kraviks were larger, stronger, with natural armor that deflected some shots. But they fought as individuals, each warrior for themselves and against human coordination. Individual strength meant less than Kix would have thought. A Kravik's warrior charged at Private J's position. Jiho fired 3 quick shots. 2 hit the Kravik's armor and did nothing. The 3rd hit between armor plates. The Kravik's fell. Every 2G was already aiming at the next target. No celebration, no hesitation, just professional efficiency. First platoon advanced to the next intersection. Lieutenant Minu's voice came over the communication channel. 2nd platoon, cover. 3rd platoon, secure the left flank. The battle flowed like a dance, violent, deadly, but choreographed through thousands of hours of training. Realize something: the humans were not just fighting, they were executing a plan. Every move had purpose, every action supported the whole. The Kravik broke. The survivors retreated back into the city streets. The humans did not pursue, they held their positions, tended to wounded, prepared for the next attack. Casualty report. Minu called out. 1st squad, 2 wounded, non-critical. 2nd squad, 1 Kia, 3 wounded. Kia killed in action. Someone had died in that brief, violent exchange. KX looked across the plaza and saw medics working on the wounded and saw 2 humans placing a 3rd into a body bag. The dead soldier's face was peaceful, like he was sleeping. They knew the risks. Sergeant Hijin said quietly. She had returned to check on Kix. Private Dong Hyun, good kid, wanted to be a doctor after his service. How can you be so calm? One of your own is dead. I am not calm. Observer. I am controlled. There is a difference. I will mourn Dong Hun later. Right now, I need to keep the rest of my squad alive. An explosion rocked the plaza. Kravik's artillery. The humans scattered to cover. More Kraviks were coming. Many more. They poured from the streets in a wave of kitten and claws. Ambush. Someone shouted, we are surrounded. Felt fear like ice in their veins. The humans were going to be overrun. There were too many Kraviks, too many angles of attack. This was it. The humans had failed. Then Lieutenant Minu's voice cut through the chaos. All units hunker down. Artillery fire. Mission requested. Danger close, sir. That will put the shells within our own position. A soldier protested. I know. Everyone into hard cover now. The humans moved fast, precise, taking positions behind the strongest cover they could find. Some dove into the crater from the Kravik's artillery. Others pressed against building foundations. Sergeant Hijin grabbed cheeks and pulled them into a shattered doorway. Cover your ears, Hijin commanded. Had no ears as humans understood them, but they understood the concept. The world was about to become very loud. The artillery came like thunder from heaven. Shells screamed down from orbit. The plaza disappeared in fire and smoke. The ground shook. Kix's whole body vibrated with the concussive force. This was power beyond anything Kix had imagined. And it was landing on the human Positions, when the smoke cleared, the Kravik's ambush was gone, literally. Bodies and parts of bodies scattered. Across the plaza, the humans had called destruction down on their own heads, and it had worked. Kak stared in shock. You could have killed your own people. Some risks are worth taking, Higgins said. Better to risk some than guarantee losing all. Medic Yunji was already moving among the human positions, checking for wounded from the artillery. Her hands were steady despite having just survived bombardment of her own position. This was routine for her. Kicks found Private Taeyang slumped against a wall. One leg was badly injured, bleeding despite the armor, but his rifle was up, covering an approach. Still fighting despite his injury. Taeyang Unjai ran to him. Medical kit. Open. I'm okay, Taeyang said. His voice was tight with pain. Just patch me up. Quick. Yunji worked fast, applied a tourniquet, injected something for the pain. You need evacuation. After the position is secure, still got fight left, and that was when KX understood. Truly understood. Humans did not just fight until they won. They did not just fight until the odds turned against them. They fought until they physically could not fight anymore. The Velron had forgotten what it meant to be warriors, but humans had never forgotten, could never forget, because for humans, war was not about glory or conquest. It was about protecting those who could not protect themselves, and they would pay any price to fulfill that duty, even if the price was measured in blood. Night fell on Thesser Prime. The human perimeter held 12 sectors around 12 cities, 8,000 humans against 40,000 Kraviks. The mathematics did not favor the defenders, but mathematics did not account for human stubbornness. Chick stood on what the humans called the line, a makeshift wall of rubble, vehicles, and prefabricated barriers that separated the human-controlled sector from the city beyond. Behind this line were 200,000 Velaran civilians. In front of this line were approximately 3,000 Kravik warriors probing for weaknesses. They will attack in force. Tonight, Sergeant Higgins said she was eating something from a ration pack. The food looked unappetizing too, but H-Jun ate mechanically. Fuel for the body. Kraviks prefer darkness. Their eyes see better than ours in low light. Then you are at a disadvantage. We usually are. H-Jun finished her meal and checked her rifle again. That is why we are good at this. 18 Jin Jam and Huan. The first day of fighting had been costly. Charlie Company had lost 30% of its soldiers, dead or too wounded to fight. Survivors were exhausted, running low on ammunition and facing at least 2 more days before relief arrived. Cheeks had watched human after human fall, had seen injuries that would have made Velan surrender, yet the humans kept fighting. Private Taeyang was still on the line. His leg was heavily bandaged, but he had refused evacuation. They need every gun, he had said. Medic Uni had argued, but Taeyang was immovable. Now he sat at a firing position, leg propped up, rifle ready. Observer, Lieutenant Minyu approached. His armor was scorched and dented. His face showed the exhaustion he carried. We are conducting a night operation. I wanted to inform you an operation. You are attacking reconnaissance in force. The Kraviks have a supply depot 2 km from here. We need intelligence on their capabilities. Also, destroying their supplies would be helpful. You are sending people out into Kravik's controlled territory in darkness when they have the advantage. Yes, 12 volunteers, Sergeant Hun is leading them, found Hun preparing. With 11 other humans, they were applying dark paint to their faces, checking equipment, moving with quiet purpose. This was suicide. Was certain of it. Sergeant, why do you volunteer for this? H. John looked up from checking her gear. Because it needs to be done. And because I am good at it. You could die, yes, but if we succeed, maybe fewer people die overall. Worth the risk. The raid team left at midnight. They moved into the darkness like ghosts. Chicks watched them go, certain they would never return. The math was simple. 12 humans against thousands of Kraviks in darkness, in enemy territory. Impossible. 2 hours later, explosions lit the night sky. The Kravik supply depot went up in flames. 15 minutes after that, the raid team returned, all 12 alive, some wounded but alive. They had done the impossible. How, Cheeks? Asked Hijan as a medic treated a burn on her arm. The Kraviks expect certain behaviors, Hijan explained. They expect enemies to defend and die. They do not expect anyone to be crazy enough to attack them, so we attacked them, used their expectations against them. But you could have all died. That is exactly why it worked. Observer, we were willing to risk everything. They were not expecting that level of commitment. The Kraviks' response came an hour later. Wave after wave of warriors threw themselves at the human lines. The humans had predicted this. They had prepared. Every firing position was covered. Every approach was zeroed in. And when the Kraviks came, the humans were ready, but the attacks did not stop. Hour after hour, the Kraviks came, testing different sections, probing for weakness. The humans rotated positions, trying to rest when they could, but there was no real rest, only brief moments of not actively fighting. Chicks watched Corporal Sora hold a section of the line with only 3 other soldiers. A Kravik's breakthrough nearly overwhelmed them. Sora's rifle ran dry. She drew a sidearm that ran dry. She drew a combat knife. The other 3 soldiers fell back, needing to reload. But Sora held her ground alone. For 6 minutes, Sora fought hand to hand with Kravik's warriors. She was smaller, weaker, with no natural weapons, but she refused to yield that position. Used the terrain, used her training, used sheer determination. When reinforcements arrived, Sora was still standing, wounded, bleeding, but standing. Why did you not fall back? Chicks asked her later while Medici treated her injuries. Sora's voice was rough with pain and exhaustion. Because that position controls the approach to the civilian shelter. If they got past me, 2,000 Vthurin were at risk, including children. I could not let that happen. But you could have died, yes. But they would have lived. Good trade. The logic was incomprehensible to Cheeks. Velen valued life, all life. The idea of trading one's own life for others was not something understood anymore. They had evolved past such primitive concepts, or so Kix had thought. Now, watching humans trade their lives for strangers, KX wondered, perhaps Velthurin had not evolved past anything. Perhaps they had just forgotten what it meant to care enough about others to sacrifice everything. Day 2 brought worse news. Ammunition levels were critical. Human supplies were running at 15%. Medical supplies were exhausted. Casualties had reached 40%. The relief fleet was still 8 hours away. 8 hours. That might as well have been 8 years. Captain Duan's voice came over the command channel. Chix was in the command post with Lieutenant Minyu. All units ammunition conservation is now critical. We need to hold for 8 more hours. Make every shot count. Sir, if the Kraviks launch a full assault, we may not have enough ammunition to stop them. This was from another company commander. Then we hold with what we have. Duan's voice was calm, certain. We did not come here to retreat. We came here to protect civilians. That mission has not changed, Lieutenant. Minyu turned to address Charlie Company. The order spread through the human lines. Fix bayonets, attach the long knives to the end of rifles, prepare for hand-to-hand combat. The humans were preparing to fight the Kraviks in close quarters if necessary. You are going to charge them? Kix asked, horrified. With knives? No, Minyu said. His voice carried the weight of someone who had been here before. We are going to make them charge us, and when they do, we will remind them of something they have forgotten. What is that? That humans are not prey. We are apex predators. We hunted megafauna to extinction on our home world. We survived ice ages and plagues and disasters that killed millions. We learned to fight with rocks and sticks and our bare hands before we ever had guns, and we never ever forgot how final Kravik's assault came at dawn. Every warrior they had left, 3,000 Kraviks, charging the human lines simultaneously. The humans fired until their ammunition ran out. Then they fired sidearms until those ran dry. Then they fixed bayonets and prepared to hold the line with steel and flesh. Kick expected the humans to break. How could they not? They were outnumbered, exhausted, and out of ammunition. Any rational species would surrender. Any sane species would retreat, but humans were neither rational nor sane. When protecting others, the Kraviks hit the human lines like a wave, and the humans held. They fought with knives and fists and rocks and anything they could use as weapons. They fought in pairs, covering each other. They fought in groups, supporting one another. They fought until they could not stand, then fought from the ground. Private Jiho fell with a Kravik's blade in his shoulder. He grabbed the Kravik's warrior and pulled it down with him, stabbing with his combat knife until the warrior stopped moving. Then he pushed himself up and returned to the line. Medic Yunji treated wounded under fire, refusing to take cover. They need me, she said when Chix begged her to protect herself. My life is worth spending if it saves others. And through it all, the humans did not break, did not surrender, did not retreat. They held because they promised they would hold, because 200,000 civilians depended on them, because that was what humans did. The Kravik's assault faltered, not because they were losing, but because human resistance was psychologically incomprehensible to them. The Kraviks fought for conquest in glory. When resistance became too costly, they retreated to fight easier battles, but humans fought for others, for protection, for duty, and that made them unstoppable in ways the Kraviks could not understand. Relief forces arrived to find the human lines battered but holding. 8,000 humans had become fewer than 4,000 effectives, but they had held for 72 hours, and 200,000 civilians lived. Because of it, the relief fleet brought fresh troops, medical supplies, and evacuation ships for the civilians. It also brought reinforcements that turned the tide of battle. Within 6 hours of arrival, the Kraviks were in full Retreat, within 12 hours Thesser Prime was secured. The threat was over, but the cost was written in blood across the planet. Chicks walked through the human field hospital. Rows of wounded soldiers lay on medical beds. Some would recover. Some would never fight again. Some would never walk again. Yet when chicks passed, the wounded nodded or saluted or smiled. Pride in what they had accomplished outweighed their pain. Private Taeyang was scheduled for evacuation to a proper medical facility. His leg could not be saved. It would be amputated and replaced with a prosthetic. When Kai visited him, Taeyang was looking at pictures on a small device. His daughters, "I am sorry for your injury," Chick said. Taeyang looked up and smiled a real smile. "Do not be. I am going home to see my daughters. That is worth any price. But you lost your leg." "I lost a leg," Taeyang corrected. "I kept my life, and more importantly, 200,000 people kept their lives. If someone asked me to make the same trade again, I would do it without hesitation." Final casualty count was devastating. 8,000 humans deployed, 6,200 survived, 1,800 dead, 62% casualties. By any military standard, the human force had been destroyed, but they had held 72 hours against 5-1 odds. 200,000 civilians evacuated safely, and the Kraviks suffered their first major defeat in a decade, 70% casualties. Their momentum broken, their reputation shattered. Kik found Captain Duan supervising the loading of the dead. Each body was treated with careful respect, wrapped in flags carried by their comrades, loaded aboard ships that would take them home to their families. No one was left behind. No one was forgotten. "Captain, may I ask you something?" Dayan turned. His face showed the exhaustion of 3 days without sleep, but his eyes were clear. Why do humans fight like this? You could have retreated, could have waited for reinforcements, could have minimized your casualties, but you chose to stand and suffer losses that would break any other species. Why? Duan was quiet for a long moment. He watched as another flag wrapped body was loaded aboard a transport. "Because we are not the strongest species in the galaxy. We are not the fastest or the toughest or the smartest. We are just humans, and that means when someone needs help, we show up. When the fight seems impossible, we fight anyway. When any sane species would quit, we are just getting started, but at such cost." "Yes, war always costs." Daewon looked at Kik directly. "But you know what costs more? Not fighting. Letting innocents die because the odds are bad. Living in a galaxy where might makes right and the strong prey on the weak. That is a cost we cannot accept." "We will not accept." Chicks helped with the civilian evacuation over the next day. Velron families boarded transports heading to safety. Many were injured. All were traumatized, but they were alive because humans had decided they were worth dying for. A Velen child approached KX. Young, perhaps equivalent to a human. 6-year-old. "Are you with the humans?" the child asked. "I'm an observer. I was watching them. Can you thank them for me?" A human soldier carried me to safety. Lieutenant Minyu had been wounded on the final day. A Kravik's blade had caught him across the ribs, but he had held his position until relief arrived. Then he had helped with civilian evacuation. Despite his injury, that was the kind of person he was. "I will tell him," Chicks Promised when Kix found Minu he was sitting with what remained of Charlie. Company, fewer than 60 soldiers from the original 180, they sat in small groups, talking quietly, sharing memories of fallen comrades, processing what they had survived. Sergeant H. Jun was telling a story about Private Dong Yan, the soldier who died in the first engagement. He wanted to be a doctor, used to practice medical skills on anyone who would let him, terrible bedside manner. But his heart was in it. The others laughed, sad laughter but genuine. They remembered their friend not for how he died but for how he lived. Lieutenant Minu, Chix approached. I was asked to give you a message, a child you saved wanted me to thank you. Minu nodded. I hope she is well. She is. Because of you, because of all of you. Corporal Sara, sitting with bandages covering half her body, spoke up. That is why we do this. Observe her for moments like that, so children can grow up, so families can stay together, so the innocent do not have to face the monsters, even if it means you become monsters yourselves. We are not monsters, Sergeant Hygen said firmly. Monsters enjoy violence. Monsters kill for pleasure. We kill because we must. And we hate every moment of it, but we do it anyway because someone has to stand between the innocent and the darkness. Cheeks returned to the Velar diplomatic vessel to file their report. They sat in their quarters for hours, trying to find words for what they had witnessed. How could Kix explain to the Confederacy what humans truly were? How could words capture the contradiction of a species so gentle yet so violent, so compassionate yet so deadly? The report took 3 days to write. Cheeks deleted and rewrote it a dozen times. Finally they settled. Truth, simple, direct truth. The Velron Confederacy Council reviewed Kix's report in session. Kix stood before the assembly and answered their questions. You recommend we never fight against humanity, one council member asked. I recommend we never give them reason to fight us, Chix clarified, because they do not fight for conquest or glory. They fight for protection and duty. Make them your enemy and you make them desperate. And desperate humans are the most dangerous force in the galaxy, and if we fight alongside them, Cheeks thought of Private Taeyang fighting with a shattered leg of Corporal Sara, holding a position alone against overwhelming odds, of Sergeant Hygen leading a suicide mission to help her comrades, of Lieutenant Minu carrying children to safety despite his wounds, of Captain Duan making impossible decisions to save lives. If you fight alongside them, you will have allies who will never abandon you, who will never surrender, who will pay any price to protect you and yours. You will have friends who measure loyalty not in words, but in blood. The council was silent. The galaxy whispers about humans. Kix continued. Whispers, warnings, and stories. I am here to tell you the stories are true, all of them. Humans are exactly as terrifying as the rumors suggest, but they are also exactly as loyal, as honorable, as protective as the rumors suggest. They are both nightmare and guardian, and which one you meet depends entirely on which side of the line you stand. Cheeks' report was classified and distributed to every Velron diplomatic mission. Within weeks it had spread through the galactic community. Species read it and understood what Cheeks had learned. Humans were not the galaxy's warriors because they were the best fighters. Other species were stronger, faster, tougher. Humans were the galaxy's Warriors because they refused to quit. Because when any reasonable species would surrender, humans found reasons to keep fighting because they fought not for themselves but for others. 3 months later, Kix received a message. It was from Lieutenant Minu. He had recovered from his injuries and returned to duty. Charlie Company had been rebuilt with new soldiers, and they had just accepted another mission, another impossible defense, another last stand. The message was brief: thank you for bearing witness, observer. Your people understand us now. That matters. Thank you for watching, and people don't forget to cheeks watch the news feeds. That evening, 3 more species had requested human military assistance. 3 more impossible situations, 3 more times that humanity would answer the call. Because that was what humans did. They showed up when others could not. They fought when others would not. They stood between the innocent and the darkness, paying the price in their own blood, asking nothing in return except the chance to do it again. Kix thought of all the humans they had met, the soldiers who joked and laughed and loved, who wrote letters to family and listened to old music, who were people first and warriors second, who hated violence but embraced it when necessary to protect others. The galaxy had warriors, every species had soldiers, but only humans had turned warfare into an art form designed not for conquest, but for protection. Only humans fought with such fury while maintaining such strict rules. Only humans could be both the most dangerous species in the galaxy and the most trusted. Kix accessed human military communications. Just listening, a new voice came across the channel, a young lieutenant leading their first mission. Nervous but determined, the lieutenant sounded like Lieutenant Minu had sounded, like every human soldier had met. All units, check in. We have civilians to protect. No retreat, no surrender. We hold the line, and somewhere in the galaxy, 8,000 humans prepared to do the impossible again, because they were human, and humans did not know how to quit.